Hello, and welcome to Come to Think of It. My name is Nemerovski, and I'm your host. I once thought that by the time I'd reached my 70s, I would have figured a few things out. However, having crossed that threshold a few years ago, I now realize that I probably understand less about life today than almost any other time. Fortunately, producing and hosting this program helps me think about important issues and attempt to present solutions. One issue I never thought I would confront in my later years is antisemitism. If you do the math, you realize I was born just after World War II ended and after the phrase "never again" was coined to deal with the lessons of the Holocaust. But to quote the great sage Yogi Berra, it's deja vu all over again. I don't think there's one solution to anti-Semitism, and the recent scourge of anti-Semitism, driven in great measure by social media, presents new, unforeseen challenges in confronting the world's oldest form of hatred. Our guest today is Rabbi Shira Stutman. She's written a highly engaging book called The Jewish Way to a Good Life. Whether or not it was among her intended purposes in writing the book, my personal take is that it exudes wisdom that I believe can be used to deflect hatred of Jews. That alone makes her book a very important read. Rabbi, welcome to Come to Think of It.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I want to get to the book. So we're going to get to the chapters in the book.
Great.
But first we're going to get to a new chapter that you've started in your life.
Yeah, it is certainly a new chapter. So for the last few years, I have been commuting out here to the Roaring Fork Valley from Washington, D.C., where I've spent the previous 16 years and where I grew up, to serve the Aspen Jewish Congregation as their interim and then the senior rabbi. And you know, I think the congregants out here knew that one day I would finally decide to move out here, but they knew.
A lot of fishermen out here. They probably hooked you and they were reeling you in.
No, they really did. They were very smart about it, but it took me a few years to realize what an extraordinary place this is. You know, and I've been saying the same thing to a lot of people, which is that I know how beautiful it is. It is beautiful. The mountains are beautiful. The water is beautiful. But I think the people out here are the most beautiful of all because, you know, I'm a very coastal person. I've lived on the East Coast in a city most of my life, spent a few years in San Francisco. So I've never really lived off the coast. So the people who choose to live here in the Roaring Fork Valley just feel so different from anyone I've encountered before. They are people who have chosen to leave the rat race to privilege family or the outdoors or what I would call spiritual growth over the unabashed pursuit of money or power. You know, these are people who choose to, I often say they don't live to work, they work to live. And so I just fell in love with the people who really want their lives to be lives of meaning. And what kind of rabbi wouldn't want to serve people who really are looking for their lives to be meaningful? So I'm here.
And we have an airport, so whenever you want, you can go get your city fix.
I mean, whenever you want. I feel like the Aspen airport works about 30% of the time. So sort of 1 out of every 3 times that I want, I can get my fix.
Okay. And this is a very sexist comment. It can only be a sexist comment.
Yeah.
And I'm going to blame it on my wife and her friends and other people.
Yeah.
I find the women want to get out of here more for city fixes than men.
Is that
That's
true?
That's my generalization.
Okay,
and
I'll
it's
let you
sexist,
know.
but
Talk to me in a
am.
year. I'll let you know.
So you know, from the beginning, I said, I'm getting older, but I'm not figuring anything out anymore.
Yeah.
And you're a rabbi who people look to figure things out. I have to think that in our times in general, and certainly post-October 7th, being a rabbi is about as difficult as it's been.
Yeah, I mean, there are certain ways that it's as difficult as it's been. And you spoke to some of them in your introduction, right? The increase in anti-Semitism makes it more difficult. And then the concurrent increase in Jewish fear because of the anti-Semitism makes it more difficult. I will say that we rabbis, to a certain extent, are trained. There is a way that we're trained to understand that life doesn't exactly make sense, right? Like every day we interact with people who have suffered a loss at a very young age or who have or people who are terrible people who have amassed a tremendous amount of gain, right, in a certain unfair way. So we are exposed to the unfairness of life in lots of ways, and maybe in ways that maybe other people aren't. And so the last few years, to a certain extent, feel like an extension of that. And the last few years have been hard. You know, after October 7th, with the loss in Israel and the rise of anti-Semitism in the diaspora, it's been hard to figure out how to talk to a community, how to hold a community together, especially across difference, and how to speak to a sense of mourning that doesn't seem to end. You know, when COVID happened, you know, remember, our sort of sense of loss didn't start with October 7th. You know, for some of us, it started, 20 years ago, 10 years ago. And for some of us, it started in COVID. And, you know, we often said, well, after COVID was over, we needed to sit Shiva. But, like, there was no end to Shiva, right? It sort of continued with October 7th. And so there are no Jewish rituals sometimes that map on to this moment that we're in. And so for a rabbi, sometimes we can be at a loss of words. Like sometimes rabbis have a pretty dark sense of humor, and it's like, we joke, it's like, how many times can you start a sermon with the phrase, "It's been a hard week," right? Like how many times can you go to Chat GPT to say, like, how do I say it this week? How do I say it this week? Because every week, that's what we're saying. And so you're right. In some ways, it is especially hard.
But I would just think, and I'm thinking about my life, my family's life, and the things we talk about, that maybe people are coming to you with the same questions, but the perspective is different. It's a different angle. It's a different tweak than you'd seen before. And I'm just thinking it's tough.
Well,
you're,
give me an
you're
example.
the boss, you know?
I mean, give me an example of what it's like in your family. Like, what are the things that feel more tough for you and your family right now?
I have a daughter that works in the field of dealing with anti-Semitism, American Jewish Committee.
Yeah.
And she doesn't get separation from her job and her life anymore.
Right.
I have another daughter who works in a related field.
Yeah.
And she went through periods of having separation. So it's kind of it's a consuming thing.
Correct.
And you can't walk away from it, and then it's there, and you know maybe you have to go to your rabbi to help find some of this separation, things never before. And then I woke up on October 7th, and I always say, there's a couple of days you always remember. The day Kennedy was shot. Maybe you weren't born, I was. Where were you on 9/11?
Yeah.
And now where were you when you learned about October 7th, right?
Yeah.
And what was your reaction to that? And my reaction was, I got to go to Israel.
Yeah.
And I went as quickly as I could, where my family would let me, where I felt my family would feel I was safe enough that I could go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And some people want to go but haven't been able to go,
Yeah.
and so they've lost that connection. Maybe it's just more about perspective.
Yeah.
And where it's coming at you from.
Yeah.
And then it's nonstop. So.
And I think you're totally right. Now, so your daughter, I mean, and thank her for her service, right? That is a specific. She's sort of a specific category of someone who lives and breathes anti-Semitism. And I can only imagine how difficult that is, because every day some of these people are reading about different sorts of anti-Semitic attacks coming from all different sorts of arenas in which Jews used to feel very, very safe and now feel much less so. So that's really hard. But I do think even for the average Jew in the pew who doesn't do this professionally, this moment can feel a lot less safe. And in a way, that's why sometimes going to Israel can be the best thing to do, because I've been there 3 times since October 7th, and each time I was just by a stroke of luck, happened to be there during a time where there were not a lot of bombings. But still, there is a feeling in Israel sometimes that feels safer than even being in the diaspora in a certain sort of irrational way. But I do think that one sort of antidote to the fear is to continue to live Jewish joy. One of the things that you might have seen in your research is that, post-October 7th, a few different things could have happened in the Jewish community. One is that the American Jewish community could have shrunk back, could have stopped going to synagogue, could have stopped showing up as Jews in the United States of America. But the very opposite happened. Jews started coming back to synagogue in droves. Jews started applying to jobs in the Jewish community. At one point, I heard a statistic that the applicants to Jewish jobs had increased by 55% after October 7th. So there was, it's called the surge, there was this, to some people it was surprising reaction of Jewish pride after October 7th, which I think is one type of response to anti-Semitism. And so for those people who spend a lot of time marinating in the waters of anti-Semitism, whether professionally or personally, whether on social media, as you said earlier, or elsewhere, one of the antidotes I would recommend is actually living Jewish life. Because if you're not actually doing the Jewish thing, then why are we still Jews anyway? Like, why? In America, we actually could just assimilate into nothingness. I think they would still let us do it, at this moment in America. So, and because Judaism has so much joy that's sort of baked into every part of what we do ritually in the synagogue, in the home, and on the street, there really are so many opportunities to be reminded of why we do this thing in the first place and to be proud of it.
And I've been hearing more of that, and I agree with that entirely, that doing more of it, as you just said, is probably very important. So I'm going to expand on that one just for a second, because in your book you say 57% of Americans on a monthly basis question meaning and purpose.
Yeah.
But I have been reading more that religion, the bigger religion, is making a comeback.
Yep.
And I assume you travel in all these waters. Do you agree with that comment? And if so, what changes do you see coming out of this bigger coming back to religion?
Yeah.
We're both using our hands a lot today.
I know. I mean, we're Jews, right? Like, I feel like I don't know how to talk without my hands. In fact, I do a podcast, as you may know, called Chutzpah, and it's like my producer's least favorite things, because every time I hit the microphone and she gets all, anyway. So, I think Robert Putnam wrote this very famous book a number of years ago called Bowling Alone, about how in the United States, community groups of all sorts are falling apart. People don't go to churches anymore. They don't join bowling leagues anymore. They don't join civic community groups anymore. Like American individualism was rising, and American sort of communitarianism was falling, and that sort of set off an alarm for a lot of us who really invest in interdependence as our professions, and. I think that what a lot of Americans have found is that living independent lives, like living for ourselves, centering ourselves, can only get us so far, and it doesn't bring us the type of happiness that we thought it would. I mean, the loneliness epidemic alone is evidence of this. The fact that we now know that loneliness epidemic is at an all-time high and actually can lead to an earlier death. It can lead to all sorts of physical health maladies. Loneliness can lead to all sorts of diseases, may help the average human being think to themselves, well, I don't want to die young, I don't want to be lonely, I need to be with other people, how do I do that? And still at the end of the day, whether you believe in God or not, whether you think it's important to keep kosher or not, or to take communion or not, one of the easiest places to find other human beings on a regular basis is a synagogue or a mosque or a church. So I can't speak for the other religions, but I can speak for Judaism. So more and more people are thinking to come back to religion, not necessarily because they believe in a God who, if they pray to this God, there will be a different future, but because they believe in other humans and needing to lean on other humans to get through this life that we live in that is so difficult, also so beautiful, but sometimes really, really terrifying.
So that's probably a good segue to your book.
Great. I love talking about my book.
So let's start at the 10,000-foot level, I
Okay.
call it. What's the driving force behind the book?
Okay. You want to hear the real story or like my made-for-TV story?
I can ask you the question twice, and you can give two different answers.
I'll give you both answers. I mean, the made-for-TV story, I think I just gave you, right? Like, so many of us are looking for meaning, 57% or whatever statistic you just quoted to me. Like, we are meaning-seeking creatures. We all know we're going to die as much as many of us, most of us try not to. And, at a certain point, we want to believe that our lives on earth are not for naught, that there really is a reason that we are breathing every day, that we are here every day. So So the one purpose of the book is to really figure out what are the different technologies that Judaism has created over thousands of years, that have been refined over thousands of years, that can help us lead more meaningful lives, right? So that is, and this book is not just written for Jews. I mean, I do hope that Jews read it, but really it was written for anyone who is trying to lead a more joyful life, a more connected life, a more reflective life, right? And so there are 10 different chapters in the book. Each one is dedicated to a different a different way that Jews approach a certain piece of life, whether it's ways that Jews approach mourning, or ways that Jews approach resting, or Jews approach the body. I shouldn't say Jews, I should say Judaism, because as you well know, Nemo, 2 Jews, 3 opinions. So it's not, all Jews don't approach anything in the same way. But suffice it to say, each of the chapters talks about how Jews approach a different piece of life. And the hope is that, I know that while everyone will not be able to find meaning in every single piece of the book, I do hope that everyone will be able to find some tidbit, some way to change their life in some piece of the book, if that makes sense. So that's the sort of, more polished reason I wrote the book.
No, that makes total sense. And you say in the book, I'm going to take you back to October 7th again, that I have alternatively felt like I was awaiting an imminent death or in mourning. I felt proud and ashamed. I've been an atheist and a believer. Writing this book has been a balm in an incredibly difficult time. How has this been a balm for you?
A few ways. One way it's been a balm is it touches on something I talked about a little earlier, which is that every once in a while I need to be reminded of why Jews are fighting so hard to keep Judaism alive. It's like, why aren't we like the Akkadians? Why aren't we like the ancient Romans? Like, why aren't we like the Canaanites? Why didn't we just die out like everyone else? Why are we still fighting so hard to keep Judaism alive? And so this book helped me remember, oh yeah, we actually have something to offer. It's not, I don't want to be triumphalist. This is not to say that we are better than any other religion, or, it is just to say this is what we have to offer. So that was part of the balm. I was reminded, no, I do want to fight for us to continue.
Well, that's fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
It has to be fantastic for you, too.
Oh, it really was fantastic because, I think for most of Jewish history, Jews were not given the option to just fade into the woodwork, right? For most of Jewish history, we were identified as Jew. But in America, we really have this, I think the word unique is way overused, by Gen Z and the millennials, but we really do have the almost unique experience of America of really being able to assimilate into nothingness. So why are we still fighting for us? This is the reason. It's also a balm because I do think that for a number of reasons, since October 7th, a lot of the Jewish communities that I run in have been focused almost entirely on Israel. And for a lot of good and easily defendable reasons. But I think sometimes we've forgotten that Judaism is bigger than Israel, that there is a whole massive parts of Judaism that are not connected to our love of the state of Israel. I would never want us to disconnect from the people of Israel, which is a whole other piece of it. And I wanted to remind us that Judaism is bigger than this one moment. And that also for me was a balm.
So you mentioned the chapters in the book, and if it's okay with you, I'm actually going to read what they were quickly here.
Great.
So we have acts of loving kindness, love and sex, happiness and celebration, the body, money, education, community, justice, ceasing and resting, and mourning. And I was wondering what you called them. Now, a second ago you used the word technologies.
Yeah.
I don't know if you think of all these as technologies, but is there like a one word that encompasses what these topics mean?
Well,
Or 6 words. Pick one.
No, it's an excellent question because sometimes I use the word technologies because it is so hard to define them, right? Each of these, sometimes they're virtues or values, right?
I was going to go with virtues.
Yeah. So they're virtue of ceasing and resting, but the virtue of the body, so sometimes they're each of these are sometimes they're ideals, right? They are North Stars that we orient ourselves to, but but I think more than anything else, they are ways of being and ways of showing up in the world.
And just, the number 10 also has meaning in Jewish tradition. It's a minyan, among other things. Was there something unique about 10? Did you have number 11, but you didn't include it? Did you have 9, but you got the 10? How did you pick 10? And how did you pick these 10?
So my editor picked 10
because
she said, she's like, well, books have 10 chapters, 10 ways to X, 10 ways to X. But in retrospect, one of the worst parts of writing a book is that you can't change it. I mean, like maybe one day there will be a second edition, but if I had to do it again, I would add an 11th chapter.
Okay. 10 Commandments?
Yeah, correct. It's like, what is that the Mel Brooks movie where like Moses comes down from Mount Sinai and he says the 15 commandments and then like the 10 commandments. So I would have added a chapter on tshuva or repentance or right setting, because I also think that's like a core Jewish technology, as it were, that can be useful to anyone. So my editor and I sat down, because the Experiment Press that published this book, they're actually a self-help press. So they recruited me to write this book, but from a self-help vantage point, not from an intro to Judaism vantage point. So her name was Batya Rosenblum, so she, is a Jewish woman. And so she said, these are the 10 topics that our audience is most interested in.
Oh, okay.
So I took out, there were a few that she wanted me to do that I couldn't wrap my brain around, and I put in the chapter on money, because I think we don't talk enough about Jews and money because of the associations with antisemitism, and I think we have a lot of good things to say about money. So I put that in, and so we played with it a little bit, but that's really where each of these chapters came from.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've done enough 10,000 foot level.
Great.
If it's okay with you, we'll take a quick break, or a few commercials, and come back and get in the weeds.
Great. Thank you.
Have you ever felt lost in the voting booth? With 518,000 elected officials in the United States, it's no wonder. Elections are complicated. From local school boards to the presidency, there are so many choices. And that's where Ballotpedia comes in, your one trusted source. Because the only unknown on your ballot should be who gets your vote. Our sample ballot lookup tool shows you exactly who and what will be on your ballot. Just enter your address, select your upcoming election, and prepare to vote informed. You can even save your favorites and print your completed sample ballot. With Ballotpedia, vote with confidence and vote informed.
Food Bank of the Rockies is the largest hunger relief organization in the Rocky Mountain region. Currently, they are responding to the highest levels of hunger they've seen in 10 years. Through their network of hunger relief partners, including those here in Aspen, and food distribution events, the food bank is committed to providing nutritious and familiar foods to individuals across the Western Slope. Here's an example of their great work.
When I saw the long line of cars, I thought there's such a need in the valley. What it feels like when you don't have food is that you've let your family down. I'm Sherry Lee, I'm 62 years old, and I live in Grand Junction, Colorado. We were homeless, and they fed us. We're better off than we've ever been, thanks to the Food Bank of the Rockies.
Welcome back. We've just finished doing the 10,000 foot level on this great book, The Jewish Way to a Good Life by Rabbi Shira Stutman. And we're going to get into the weeds, as I call it now. She wanted to know how we were doing during the break. I said, you're doing great. So, but now the pressure's on because she has to keep doing great. So get into the weeds. We talked about the 10 technologies, virtues, values, whatever, etc. Favorite chapter?
Well, my favorite chapter, as I implied earlier, is the chapter on Jews and money. And that really is because I think we don't talk about it enough, and that Judaism does have something to say about an approach to how to use money in the world. So that's, for me, a favorite chapter. What I have loved as I have gone around to different communities to talk about the book, and as I've heard from people about the book, is that different people have different chapters as their favorites.
Oh, no, I do too. We're going to get to mine.
Oh, we're going to get to yours. Okay. So that is.
We're doing yours first.
So that is my favorite, I think. The chapter on mourning is very personal to me because it really is framed by my personal experience of losing my father. So that one also is very meaningful to me.
Okay. Hardest chapter to write?
Justice. That was a very hard chapter to write, and I'll tell you why. When I was in Washington, D.C., I served a spiritual community called 6th and I. Like, it was literally on the corner of 6th Street and I Street in Washington, D.C., and it was an entirely blue community, meaning all Democrat, right? I was the most right-wing person in the entire community. Then I'm coming out here to the Aspen Jewish Congregation, which is more purple. And as I'm writing this chapter on justice, we are in the middle of a very difficult political campaign, and I have in my mind my own opinions on what justice looks like, but also this community that I'm growing into serving, that I want to show up for in a way in which I am both standing in my integrity, but also able to sort of remain in conversation with them in a way that they can hear me. It's very delicate, especially in such a polarized time. So that chapter was very hard for me to write. And as you'll notice, I ended up really drilling down on what does the Hebrew word tzedek mean, as opposed to pontificating on my understanding, Shira's understanding of what justice looks like in 2025. I just took a different way in to the conversation.
Okay. How did you choose to order the chapters?
My editor chose them.
Okay.
It's interesting because people ask me that question all the time, and I wish I had a better answer. If I next time I write a book, I'm going to try to guess the questions that I get asked at my book talks, and then I'm going to try to preempt them with better answers. But that's just how that's how she chose them.
Well, again, I mean, you end with mourning, so I guess that's
death.
Maybe death is, or maybe you should start with death and then go to life. I don't know.
I know.
Okay, so my favorite chapter, when we talk about this, was Love and Sex.
Really?
Because you talk about a topic that I talk to my daughters about all the time.
Uh-huh.
And it's really learning to love yourself first and to take care of yourself first. You say in there, for some people, loving others is easy.
Yeah.
It's loving oneself that is difficult.
Yeah.
How to begin? Start by trying to change the story you tell yourself and how you show up in the world. I've phrased it a little differently because I take the expression, when I talk to my kids and others from the airplane, put your oxygen mask on first.
Correct. Yeah.
So I found that part of the discussion very compelling.
Yeah.
Tell me about writing that, and why was that so meaningful to you to get to that part of love, and particularly again in the world you're traveling in.
Yeah. So there's a great line that I learned in seminary that every rabbi writes the sermon that they need to hear. So this was the sermon that I needed to hear. And, when I was serving the community in Washington, D.C., one of the things I noticed very quickly, and I write about this a little bit in the book, is that there are a lot of people who are just very harsh to others. They were harsh to others they were friends with. They were very judgmental and harsh to people they weren't friends with. And forget it, talking about people on the other side of the political aisle. I mean, they were so... And I spent a lot of time thinking about, why are we so hard on each other? Like, what is it about that we're so hard on each other? And, as I talk about in the book, it was a friend of mine who gave me the insight about one specific person, which is that one of the reasons we can be so hard on other people is because we're so hard on ourselves. And sometimes other people are doing things that reflect the parts of ourselves that reflect the parts of ourselves that we like the least, or we don't even want to look inside ourselves, but instead we just look at other people and critique them, or we're ashamed of something, so we put it in this room and we lock the lock and throw away the key, and we just look over there and critique others. And so one of the techniques that I developed for myself and then pitched to others is, why don't you work a little bit on looking inside yourself and realizing the beauty that you have? I mean, of course we all have crap inside of ourselves. Of course we are not perfect. There is no world in which we believe that we are perfect. And Judaism, of course, believes that the goal in life is to always do a little bit better, be a tiny bit kinder, be a tiny bit more compassionate, et cetera, et cetera. And yet, we all have good inside of us. We are all created in God's image. So well, if we spend a little more time recognizing that we have good inside of us, maybe it'll help us recognize that there is also good inside of the other. And maybe in that moment, we will be kinder to the other as well. So really, it's a sort of utilitarianism. It's not just about me recognizing that I'm good as an end into itself. It's me recognizing that I am good so that, therefore, I can recognize that you are good as well. It's a certain sort of approach to love.
No, I found it very compelling. And I don't mean to keep drawing you back to October 7th and, again, what we're going through as a community here, but there's a quote that I've always found very compelling, and of course it came back over the last couple of years, but I think it feeds somewhat into this chapter on love again, so I'd like to read it and get your reaction. And you're going to know the quote the minute I start, some gold in my ear. It said, "We can forgive Arabs for killing our children.
Yeah.
We cannot forgive them for forcing us to kill their children.
Yeah.
Peace will come when the Arabs love their children more than they hate us."
Yeah.
That quote just stayed with me at different parts of my life. It keeps coming back to me. And you're writing a chapter on love, and like you said, we're not perfect. Jews aren't perfect. I don't know many Jews and people in my life for whom hate is an emotion that shows up regularly.
Yeah.
But you say, as you said, we're sensing it everywhere in our lives right now, and we come back to Golden Year, and people want peace in the Middle East. People want peace in Gaza. No one wants killing everywhere. But again, she says, peace will come when the Arabs love their children more than they hate us. So do you agree with kind of her quote? And if you do agree with her quote, where are we going?
Yeah. Well, so let me say one thing about the quote. I too grew up with that quote, and I think there are pieces of it that are beautiful. I hate any sort of quote that lumps an entire group as the X, right? The Jews, as if all the Jews agree on anything. The blacks, the Arabs. I think there are Arab people who are peace-loving, just like there are Jewish people who are peace-loving. But there is this idea that peace will come when the people who hate Israelis and want to bring war upon Israelis, right? Well, like we could say it that way, as opposed to a full group. So, okay, so that being said, right, the question that you're asking is, so that if that is my one sort of critique, tell me again the question that you're asking.
Where are we going? We've heard her quote. We have this difficult situation. You talking about love, get us somewhere, Take us to an end, to get us to peace.
Oh, so
you have 3 minutes.
By the way, Nemo, this actually goes back to your very first question, right? You want me to give you the answer right now, right?
And I'm a rabbi.
Right. So this might be actually.
But you're not the prophet.
Correct. I sit in the rabbinic voice, not in the prophetic voice.
Right.
Read the book,
I read the book.
I mean, you read the book, but people watching can read the book. So this is really interesting. So first of all, I want to say another thing, which is that I've heard a lot of hatred from my Jewish compatriots, especially since October 7th as well. And maybe what we would say is we were pushed into hatred. That's complicated as well. So where do we go from here? I still think there is a world in which even as we defend ourselves, we can still believe that love is possible and that peace is possible. And one of the things I end up talking about in the chapter on justice is that in all my justice work, I always orient myself toward peace. Peace might never come until the Messianic age. It might never come. But if you continually orient yourself towards having peace as your goal, I do believe that we could end up living in a world with a little bit less hate. So are we ever going to live in a world of peace? That I can't tell you. Certainly not in our lifetime. That I can tell you. Could it happen in a few lifetimes? Maybe. But I do believe we could live in a world in which we are oriented more towards peace, in which we are oriented more towards believing in the good of others rather than believing in the evil of others. I think too often whether it's this current moment, whether it's human nature, that I actually don't know. But we are lazy in how we approach the other, whether the other is our enemy, in the Middle East, or whether the other is someone we don't know, across the street. And we make them into an evil caricature. And if we refrain from doing that, it's a very, very small thing. If we refrain from doing that, we are already one step closer to peace. And we are already one step closer to the type of peace that Golda Meir envisioned.
All right, so we'll move from love and sex. We're not going to do the sex part. But
Next time
But there is a very hot topic in our world today, and it's becoming political, although it
Great.
probably shouldn't, that you deal with, and I want to know how it came about in the book, and did you write it before or after? It's in the chapter on the body. Where am I going?
Vaccinations?
Yes.
Okay, I need to tell you something, Nemo. So this is the one political thing that I wrote about in my book. Isn't that funny? And you are the first. I know I'm not supposed to point. Sorry. I grew up in a family where everyone pointed at each other, and my students have always said, Rabbi Shira.
Okay.
They tell me to do like the Bill Clinton thing where he used to go like this. Oh, you are the first person to ask me about it in any interview that I've done since the book came out. So yeah.
Well, you say that, it's a communal responsibility.
Yeah.
People would ask me why I was wearing a mask, and I would say, I'm not wearing a mask because I'm worried about getting sick. I'm wearing a mask because I'm worried that if I am sick, I
Correct.
can make someone else sick.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I took away from your message.
So this was the one thing that as I was straddling that Washington, D.C. and the Roaring Fork Valley, I kept in the book. And even my mom, because my mom read a draft of my book. She's like she's my mentor and my guru, and I dedicate the book to her among others. And she said to me, you sure you want to leave that paragraph in? And she very rarely critiques me. And I was like, yeah, I want to leave it in. But being out here, one of the things I love about the Roaring Fork Valley is I have congregants who didn't vaccinate from the right and congregants who didn't vaccinate from the left. And so it is political. But I also have had congregants who have called me to get vaccination exemptions for religious purposes as a rabbi. And I have delved deep into the text. And I have never, ever been able to find a rabbinic text that permits people not to get vaccinated, ever. Now, are there Jews who break Jewish law all the time? Of course. There are Jews who eat pork on Yom Kippur. I don't care if you break Jewish law. I just don't think you can say that it's because of Judaism that you're not getting vaccinated, because Judaism is an interdependent culture, and you can't pretend that not getting vaccinated is about the other. It's really about you. Fine. Gay Gesundheit. I am so happy that you're making that choice, and I don't judge you. But you just can't. I haven't heard a convincing argument about how it's for the community.
Well, understood. So I don't know what chapter this fits into, and it kind of comes back to my question about how hard it is to be a rabbi these days. But again, you do have a chapter on. I'm going to find my paperwork here. You've got justice, you've got community, you've got education, and I think they all revolve around this notion of Jews have historically been very generous people. We do not only want to educate ourselves, we want to educate others. We are a loving group, etc. But a lot of people woke up again after October 7th and said, wait a minute, I marched with Black Lives Matters. I'm all for gay rights and everything that all the Jews that involve themselves in socialization and social problems and saving the world get into. But then I woke up one day and my friends weren't with me anymore.
Yeah.
They weren't returning my phone calls.
Yeah.
I'm ostracized.
Yep.
I'm over here. They're over there.
Yeah.
How do you bring that into your book, and how do you have these conversations?
Your questions are really excellent, but they're making me sweat a little bit. I just have to say.
I doubt that.
So I would say a few things. First of all, I would not use words like no one, right? It's not true that no one from all of these other marginalized
Right.
groups,
I'm generalizing.
So that's a
The bigger no one.
But you're right. A lot of the organizations, right? A lot of the large organizations didn't stand with the mainstream American Jewish community's response to Israel. But I actually have what to me feels like a very simple answer to that, which is when we are fighting for marriage equality or when we are fighting against racism, we are not doing it because we want those people to be our friends. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do. And that's really hard when in our perception the situation is reversed, right? In our perception, those same organizations don't stand with us, because it feels like worse than a slap on the face. It feels like we are maybe a stab in the back, or it feels like being left like on the edge of a cliff to, whatever it is. It's like, it's a terrible feeling. But at the end of the day, when that's not, if we do believe that we are a light into the nations, which is complicated teaching in and of itself, part of that belief is that we're not doing any of the work we do so that we can get into heaven. We're not doing it for any sort of recompense. We're doing it because that's what Jews do.
No, and again, it is what Jews do. It's how I was taught, how I grew up. It's how my friends in the world I live in. But
it's hard. I just want to say, I don't want to downplay what you're saying. Yeah. It's hard. And look, there will need to be some healing, after this moment. And there has been some, I do think in some places where there is an easy split, there has been some split. Like, for instance, the reproductive choice movement has had a split. And now there is a specific reproductive rights organization that for Jews, which is ridiculous. Like that's like a waste of money. It's a total waste of money. But because of anti-Semitism in certain of the leading organizations, reproductive choice organizations, there's now has to be a whole separate organization. So the work is still being done. It's just being done over here rather than over here. It's a terrible shame. So maybe in 10, 20 years, they will be able to all come back together. I hope that's true. But I do think there are other instances, specifically in certain Jewish organizations that had spent decades building alliances with certain other organizations representing marginalized groups, in which there wasn't such a break after October 7th, in which there really was a sense of trust that had been built up that didn't break apart. It's just that in a lot of the largest, most well-known organizations, there really was a very big rift.
Okay, so in our remaining time, I want to have you sell the book however you want. Pretend the question is sell your book.
Yeah.
But in selling your book, I want you to answer a question you ask in your book.
Okay.
And why I think you may have written a book, and it says, is the world too broken?
Yeah.
So is the world too broken? And now sell your book as to why your book is the answer.
Okay, so I'm going to answer like super honestly, because now
now you're going to get honest.
No, I just feel like we've spent all this time together, and even though I know the cameras are rolling, I feel close to you. The truth is, I don't know if the world is too broken, but I choose to live as if it's not. And so I think if we are going to either believe the world is not too broken, or we are going to choose to live as if it is not too broken, then we need to live within a set of ethics or a discipline that can help us understand how to show up in this world. And you can choose your own adventure, something from column A, something from column B, something from column C. To me, that feels really hard because you're doing it alone and you don't have a sort of tree of tradition to lean back on. So I would encourage you instead to choose religion at its best. For me, that religion is Judaism, as a backstop, as a way of approaching the world. Is Judaism perfect? It is not. There's a whole page in that book in which I say, like, I could have written another 1,000 pages on Judaism's homophobia and xenophobia and all the things. Thank God that's not the book I wrote. But Judaism does have a lot of beautiful ways to live in this potentially very broken world. And so that's how I would sell the book. One of the best ways to fight anti-Semitism is to live Judaism. One of the blessings of this moment, I would say, and some Jews disagree with me, is intermarriage. 75% of non-Orthodox Jews in America right now are intermarried. They are married to non-Jews.
That's a startling statistic.
It is a huge number. And what that means, and there are some complicated results from that, but what it means is that there are hundreds of thousands of non-Jewish partners and their family members that are exposed to Jewish life and culture in a way they never could have imagined. So this is the book for them and for anyone else who wants to know what it means to live a Jewish life or to live a meaningful life in this world. How's that for a pitch? What do you think?
It's a great pitch. If I hadn't read the book already, I'd go read it right now. Is there a website? Is there?
Well, my website is mixedmultitudes.net.
Mixed?
Multitudes. Yeah, it's a little take
.net.
on .net. Yeah, and you
Okay.
can get the book there, but you can get it on any place that you buy a book. Explore Booksellers has a bunch of copies, signed copies as well, and I would be honored if anyone would read it.
And for those that want to learn more about you and live life more regularly with you, talk about the podcast quickly. How do we find you there?
The podcast is called Chutzpod, Chutzpod. Chutzpod, and it comes out almost weekly. You can find it anywhere you get your podcasts, or Aspen Jewish Congregation. We are all over the valley, from Aspen down to Glenwood Springs. You can find me almost anywhere in the valley, almost any day of the week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nemo.
So again, we've been visiting with Rabbi Shira Stutman and talking about her terrific book, The Jewish Way to a Good Life. And she just pitched the book, and I just read the book, and I think you should go read it. And there's a lot of reasons to read this book. Some of them start out with my talking about this is maybe a way to think about some solutions to anti-Semitism. There's not one solution. Maybe you're one of the people that she writes about in her book that on a monthly basis is questioning, what's my life about, things like that. And maybe because you piqued your curiosity, you want to read the chapter on money. Doesn't really matter. It's a great book. We thank you for being with us today and hope you'll join us again on Come to Think. Thank you.